And the next thing I want to do is kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at and kind of our paradigm of educating. So our model started actually in my family. I come from a family of 8 siblings. And when we first started out, we were a traditional Asian family. There's rules for everything. We knew when we had to go to bed, it was 8 o'clock. Woke up at 6 o'clock. There was a very rigorous summer educational program in the summer created by my mother, because they weren't going to buy anything. They created their own things, right? And it lasted like all morning. And they experienced what all large organizations experience. There's only very few people who could do anything and a lot of people who are just like feeding off of them, right? And they're trying to figure out, how do we do this? And what really woke them up was when my oldest brother turned 19 years old, my dad looked in his eyes and asked him, you're going to be an adult, you are an adult, what are you going to do with your life? And he had a blank stare. And this really scared my father. And he started to realize that maybe he made one too many decisions for his child at that time. And so what he did was he took the advice of his mentor, who was the director of the construction school at ASU at that time, which was, I have no rules. The only rule is there are no rules. And if you get into trouble, come find me so I can help you get out of it. And so he came home. And pretty much overnight, a family based upon all these rules, management, direction, control, there's no rules. We asked him, well, what does no rules mean? It means there's no punishment. You can do whatever you want. There's no punishment to it. You don't have to do chores. You don't have to go to school if you don't want. You don't have to do anything. Whoa. There's very few times I thought my parents were going to get a divorce, and that was one of those times. Okay? Because he didn't actually talk to my mom about this before he did it. And yes, the worst case scenario happened. No chores got done. Now, I was an obedient child. I was the middle child. Now, when you look at this chart, you can kind of see who was unhappy and who was happy here, right? The younger children were all happy because that's about the time where there's no rules. That's the time when they said, okay, do whatever. And the worst case scenario happened. Everybody played video games all day. Nobody wanted to do chores except for me, right? And so everything went into chaos. And for the longest time, we thought, Joe, who's in the back right here, and Isaac, who's over here, the 2 youngest, we thought they would be spoiled, good-for-nothing, rotten brats. Because that's what happened. You know, they did nothing. And we thought this would happen. But as they got older, the funniest thing happened. They got to be in high school, sophomore, junior. They started to, on their own, nobody told them anything. They started to put away the video games. They started to study. They started to take things seriously. And amazingly, by the time they were in their junior, senior years, I was already teaching at the university and doing research. And I would trust them more than most of my PhD students. They were more creative as well as more responsible than most students and most people I was dealing with. And we couldn't believe it. So as I started to look at this, I started to realize that this shift, going from our model is more important as a parent, to, okay, we're going to relax and we're going to spend all of our effort and resources on trying to help you guys figure out what you want and help you get there. And amazingly, in the business world, this is what they're finding out with research. They're starting to find out that there's 2 models. The old way, which is we got this hole and we're going to shove everybody in this hole regardless of what shape you're in. This is a very difficult model. 1, it's costly. It takes a lot of money to do this, a lot of training. 2, there's a lot of resistance. And 3, in the end, it doesn't work very well. And that's what they're finding. They're spending a lot of money on training, on trying to change people, and it's actually not working. And so what are they doing? They found out there's a new model. It's called alignment. It's we find out who you are and we put you in the right place so we don't have to tell you what to do. You naturally do what you're good at. And if we put you in the right place and let you go, you actually excel more and we have to do less as an organization. And this is what they're finding. We have gone all over the world implementing these ideas. In large organizations, whether it's government, private industry, whether it's large or small companies. And every company always tells us the same thing. Our employees, they're not trained enough. They're not responsible enough. They don't understand the industry enough. And every time we go into every company, we always find out it was never the employees. It was always the way they were being managed. Unfortunately, we went into the education realm and we started finding it's the same thing. How many educators always would tell me, students, they don't have a long enough attention span. They're not smart enough. They're not responsible enough. They only look at their phones. They play too many video games. And I have never met a student when we worked with them individually where it was ever the student. I've never. I have found out it's always been the way that they're being taught, the structure they're being put into, right? And amazingly, research is finding this out. I just read an article a little while ago saying, actually, it's not how many video games or how much screen time a child has. It's actually how the parents react to it. And they're starting to find out that parents that react with empathy to their students, their children, that are patient with them and try and figure out what's going on, actually those students, whether they're having a lot of screen time or very little, those students do the best. It's an amazing thing that they're finding out. So here's what we're starting to find out in education. The traditional aspect is, or the traditional paradigm is, what we do is we take a little bit of everything in the world, and we're going to shove this into the mind of a teenager, right? And we're going to shove as much as we can into their mind, hoping that after about maybe like 10 to 14 years of this, they're going to go out into the world and know exactly what they're going to do to add value. And we do this all sorts of ways. We're finding even more creative ways and more efficient ways to cram more information to a child's mind. The only issue is what? When you shove a lot of information to a young child's mind, it does two things. It gets them confused, and it also gets them stressed out. And that's why we're seeing mental health on the rise. That's also why when I was at ASU teaching the Barrett Honors College students, the top 10% of students that come to ASU, number one thing is they didn't know what they really wanted to do in life. And if they did, they were doing it for money. They didn't know if it was going to make them happy. They didn't know if they were good at it. They're doing it purely for the money. And you can clearly see in those students, they're headed for a crash sometime. A realization that, what am I doing, right? And it's an amazing thing to watch. But we found another paradigm. Instead of trying to shove a lot of information to a child's mind, what if we actually figure out who the child was? So the first principle is individual-centered. Everybody has a unique talent that they do not have to be taught. They're born with it, it's a predisposition, and they can learn very quickly in that area. If the child figures out who they are at a young age, understands how they're going to make their money, how they're going to add their value, well, this changes the whole paradigm. Why? Because in today's world, with the rapid changing of technology, a lot of the occupations right now in the world today, they're going to be obsolete by the time your children graduate college. In order for them to make a living, they have to be really good, and they have to be really good at one thing, right? Because the competition is so huge out there. There's so many good people out there that unless your child figures out what they're good at and starts and figures out, they don't have a shot. Why? Because somebody else who's really good at it, who loves to do it, who's naturally talented, they're going to spend all their time doing it. And those are the people who are finding the jobs, right? Next. See, what we're finding out is if they figure out who they are, instead of having to know everything, they can focus on what they're really good at. The second principle is simplicity. This is what we call simple, because if I release it, which way is it going down? Which way is it going? It's going down. Now, when you can quickly see it, everybody knows it because we understand the law of gravity, it's simple. Do you have to think about it? No, you don't have to think about it. How much risk do you have that this thing's not going to go down if I release it? Zero risk. When it's simple, it really helps students out. Because when it's simple, they can start to do what? If I release this 100 times, which way is it going every time? They can start seeing into the future. I don't even have to run the test, and you already know what's going to happen if I do it. When things get simple for a child, they can start seeing into the future. And when a child can see into the future, they know exactly what to do and they'll do it. I've rarely seen a child understand what the next step is and not take it. The only reason they're playing video games, they're on social media, they're wasting their time is why? They don't know what the next step is for them. Because whatever someone is telling them the next step is too difficult for them. They need something in between. They need to understand exactly where they can go, what they can do. And as soon as you show it to them, they'll immediately move. Right? And this is what we're finding. So in this camp this week, one of the things we wanted to do is make things simple. We taught only very simple concepts to your students. But don't get this mixed up with being easy. Sometimes simple things can be very difficult because it's so obvious. You know, that they see what they need to do and it's overwhelming. And so your students coming to this camp, they learn simple things, but it's very impactful. Every single concept they learned, which was only 4, they learned natural laws in life. Everything has a pattern. 2, they learned don't think. Why? Because if you have to think, it means it's not what? And if it's not simple, then it's going to bring more risk or less risk into your life? More risk, right? So what we want to do is, if you don't understand it's not simple to you, what should you do? Not think and do what? And go do what? When you don't know, you should what? Ask for help. Go get help, right? This is what we want to do. Go get an expert who can make it simple for you so you have no risk and you can move on, right? This is what we want to do. Now, the third principle is we want it to be action-focused. One of the things I learned, you cannot teach project management leadership in a classroom. No amount of lecturing is going to help a student. But what is going to help? The student going out and doing something, anything. It doesn't matter what it is. So we make it really fun. We made superheroes, right, this week. We played with tennis balls. We did all sorts of stuff. But there were activities, and they had to work in a team. They had to actually figure out how to work with other people. Because what we're finding out is the number one skill you need is you need to learn how to improve. That's it. And it doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're making cardboard weapons. It doesn't matter if you're like going out there and being a lawyer or an engineer or a doctor, or if you're playing video games. The same skills it takes to be the best video game player in the world is the same skills it takes to be the best doctor, lawyer, or anything in the world. You have to be able to learn how to quickly change and improve in life. And so that is what we're really trying to do, is help students learn how to change. Now, changing, it's a difficult thing to learn. The cycle of learning, being able to try new things, being able to take the next step, this is a skill. And it's a skill like any other skills. When you first start developing, are you good at it? No, you're not. This is why you might have been telling your students the same thing over and over and you don't see them moving on it. Why? Because change is slow, especially when you're young. So be patient, right? But we have found that if we make it more individual-centered, make it simple, and focus on them doing something, we have found great results from this. So these are some of the concepts that we've been teaching. And we've been doing this for a long time. It's not for every student, but it's for most students. We've found that this is a good way of learning. And we've seen great results. We've had some of our students who won international awards like the Nobel Peace Prize for Children. We've had students win national scholarships and become, I guess that's what they call it, be a national merit scholar. We've had people go to top universities, start their own companies, whatever it might be, overcome relationship issues, all sorts of things. And you're going to get a survey. We want to hear your opinion if you've seen any difference in your child. Because we're a research organization. We actually want to know what we're doing if it's having an impact. If you have any questions on anything else, please stop us, because this is not only a program that we put on for students, but we also want to make it an educational thing also for you as parents. A lot of people don't know a lot of the research going on in the world, especially in project management and dealing with people and development. But we feel it should be more widely spread. So thank you so much for being here again, and thanks for listening to me.